All right, we are, I think, live. There we go. I don't know what that was all about. Okay, and all right, folks, tell me if you can hear me. This is Ryan, and you are live, so keep that screen on something interesting, John.
I think we're gonna pop over to here.
Okay, folks, let me know if you can hear me. Put a note in chat. I'm looking at this over on YouTube, so I'll be able to see if this is going, and I know there's like about a 30-second delay. Let me know if there's any audio problems. I'll keep my eyes on this one. Okay, should be coming through any second. And interesting job.
I think we're gonna pop over to here.
Okay, good. Yeah, audio seems great. Okay. All right, folks. My name is Ryan Kingsline. I'm the founder of Vertex School, and I've been teaching game artists for a really long time. And I have with me here, let me pop him up on camera. I have with me here John Waynick, who is now, in fact, yeah, we're over on the screen, who now is certified Unreal Engine teacher. Is that the deal?
Yep. Yeah, it was an interesting process, but went through it. Authorized partner with Epic Games. Apparently, they trust me to teach their stuff.
And I trust him to run the school and help train all of the people here in game arts. And so this, to me, for those of you who Akshay, audio video is too good. Is that not good or too good? Ryan is Indian, I think. Everybody thinks I'm something, my friend. There's that little bit of Mexican in me. Makes me Spanish, Greek, and Indian. All right, so let me get actually a mix now that I've got you there. Okay, so today we want to take a look at Unreal Engine 5. I'm thinking a half hour. We want to look at some of the capacity inside the engine, and then we also want to look at how you can kind of convert scenes. And over the next couple of weeks and months, we're going to be talking more and more about this program and about this, because this is a pivotal shift. And it's a shift I personally have been waiting for a really long time. All right, and I created Game Art Institute, led that into Vertex School, and I did that not because I wanted to just 100% train game artists, but because I felt like game tech was going to be the kind of future tech. It's really the future tech of media. And that is what I want to train people on, the new art form, the new art media, which I think is going to be Unreal Engine. I mean, I love the other game engines, but I definitely think it's going to be Unreal Engine. What do you think, John?
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. Especially with just all the new stuff that they've been doing lately, even breaking outside of games. I mean, you can't really call it just a game industry or a game engine anymore, because we've broken over into virtual production. If anybody's seen The Mandalorian, a little show out there on Disney Plus. They used Unreal Engine for their virtual production, which basically kind of took the pre-viz filming and post-viz and condensed it down into one thing. You're starting to see that more and more, starting to see it more in advertising, lots of simulation, lots of military contract stuff. It's just all over the place.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I mean, you've placed students there now, right? The student who went to Pixmondo.
Yeah. So had one
Andrew.
student that, Andrew Baker, if you're out there. Hey, Andrew. So super big Star Trek nerd, and it's like his dream was always to do something with Star Trek, and so he did a Star Trek scene for his capstone project in Unreal Engine, and then I was out here trying to figure out some places that he can go apply, and then Pixelmondo, actually came to us looking for somebody, and we sent them him, and they saw his stuff, and now big Star Trek nerd is working on things like Star Trek Discovery for a living. Dream come true. So super exciting kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, let's get into Unreal Engine 5. And I thought what we should do is probably take a look at this, like what this thing is right off the bat. What are we seeing? And so let's jump into the scene.
All right, yeah, we see my screen up there.
Yep, I see your scene, and let's do Valley of the Ancients.
All right, yeah, I gotta open that one.
Close that.
Back up, and I'll get that opening in the background once again. But so this right here, Unreal Engine 5.
This is what we're going to look at here in a little bit, team. This is what we're all about. Is how John got this, what he had to do to kind of get this into 5.
Yeah. So Unreal Engine 5. It's largely very similar to Unreal Engine 4. So if you've been working with Unreal Engine 4 already, it's almost a seamless transition. There's some new things in it, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, is how you translate over from 4 to 5. But for the most part, even though we've got this shiny new coat of paint on here for this new UI, it's still largely the Unreal Engine you know and love, just with some cooler stuff on it. I also have Unreal Engine 4 over here, which you can see we've got what looks like a little bit of a different UI going on. But over here in 5, this is, here's my content drawer down here, the same panels, all of that. These are the same different editing modes. Just a brand new fresh coat of paint on it. On top of the cool new things that the engine's doing. But Unreal Engine 5, what are those big things that everybody's been hearing about? Well, we've got Lumen, which is a new lighting system, completely changes the way that you approach lighting. It's beautiful and frustrating at the same time. Something we've learned over the last 24 hours, a little over 24 hours now. And we have Nanite, which Nanite, let's get this opening up the ancient world level here. Nanite is that new thing that you keep hearing about where, the high poly to low poly baking process, you don't really need it anymore. No more need for low polys because you can export right out of ZBrush and bring it right into Unreal Engine. But one of the things that over the last 24 hours that I've discovered, as I've been diving into it and just kind of thinking about the different industries out there and everything, is that I don't really think a lot of the old workflows are going to go away. They're just going to evolve some. So while this is opening up here, let me jump back over into this scene. All of this stuff that I have in this scene, this is stuff that I've modeled out in that typical mid-poly and trim sheet workflow that environment artists are used to. And if I were to do this scene from scratch in Unreal Engine 5, approaching it with the knowledge of things like Nanite, I would probably largely do it in the same way. Would I be utilizing normal maps and the baking process for my trim sheets and all of that? Probably still yes. The big difference that there would be for me if I was approaching this would probably be that a lot of my mid polys would approach a little bit higher of a poly count, maybe putting a little bit more geometrical detail in there. giving more geometry for better vertex painting, that sort of thing. But ultimately, I think the process is, for games at least, is still going to largely be the same, just evolve a little bit. The other thing that's going to change with it, if we jump over here into the Valley of the Ancients, is that this whole scene through here, most of this environment is made up of Megascan's assets. And so if you're familiar with Megascan's assets, then you know that that's photogrammetry. So going out there doing 3D scans of real-world objects, especially the organic kind of objects like rocks and that sort of thing. So we come in here, and what probably used to, the way we used to do it, or we would have done it in an Unreal Engine 4 workflow, this through here would probably mostly be a landscape. So it would be a terrain. But through here, you know, they've taken these Megascan's assets and they've just kind of slammed them together. And this new Nanite system, which was talking to one of our other guys at Vertex about this, and, you know, we were kind of joking about how it's, in a way, it's like a voxelization system. Very similar to what you might see in a Houdini workflow with VDBs, or Dynamesh with ZBrush, that sort of thing. And, you know, the more we thought about it, the more that kind of ended up being an accurate description there. So Nanite lets you have these meshes that have just, you know, millions of triangles. And the way that it, you know, caches all of that, I won't go into the technical details. You can watch the Epic stuff for that, or read the documentation. But the way that it caches it allows you to have essentially, you know, billions of triangles on screen at a time. And I tested this out yesterday too. I exported something from ZBrush, 4 million triangles, brought it in, made, you know, 50 copies of it, and didn't even affect the frame rate at all. I think what's going to... Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, let's get in and let's actually take a look at all of this, because I want to dive into the whole concept of Nanite, but let's just see. So do you want to drop in and play this, and let's just walk around?
Yeah. So this here, something I was testing out earlier, was trying to get her into the second half of this, but it wants to take a while to load that. But if you're able to download this project and run it, you can get in here, and the first thing that this does is it pops you into her little drone that she's got, where you can fly around this whole scene. And it's super cool because it's really big, and you can just fly around. You can see all of this. Was watching the live stream earlier, and this was all built by hand. It's not procedural. They had a few guys on the Quixel team that hand placed all of these assets.
All of these, the whole world.
Yeah. I thought that they were gonna start talking about some Houdini workflow that they had, but nope, not quite.
Wow.
You know, they hand placed that all. Let's do that. Walk around with her. So this is one cool thing about Nanite is I've had a lot of students, you know, on the character side that have asked me, you know, it's like, well, what does Nanite mean for character artists? Because Nanite does not work with skeletal meshes or anything that needs to be deformed. But I think how Nanite benefits character artists is that, you know, since most of the environments are going to be converted over to this Nanite system, that's actually going to free up more raw triangles for character artists to pump into characters.
And didn't you tell me you looked at this character, how many polygons it was?
I believe her body itself was 174,000, and what really excited me was her hair was 316,000 triangles.
Wow.
It was wild.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So I'd take her into the next scene, but it takes forever to load it on the editor project here. So, but super beautiful worlds, combination of what you can do with the film level assets and the Lumen lighting system.
I think it might have been Tim that said that the least realistic thing on this is her. Everything else
Yeah.
is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think she's a little bit more on the stylized side too.
Yeah.
She's got some really big eyes. But yeah, it's just an amazing world that they have through here.
That is crazy. Can we look at the world and kind of unpack what the heck, how these are assembled? Because I've seen a lot of videos of UE5, but this idea, because this is, for me, the shift is, it's kind of like I was thinking about it this morning. It's a return to sculpting, but it's not a return to sculpting. But like that's what my mind was thinking. It's like it's a return to geometry. Like ZBrush is my go-to. So it's like it's a return to geometry. It's a return to millions of polygons and that dream that Ofer had.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the thoughts that I had was, so in Unreal Engine 4, we have this workflow where, and I'll pop in here and I'll just do a quick material.
No, let me get my face out of this.
All right, so we have this workflow in Unreal Engine 4 where you can convert this over to use material attributes here, and then essentially you break it out so you can actually layer up materials inside of a material. So there's this workflow where you can use this node right here, this matte layer blend baked normal, where you essentially you can feed in a tileable material, and then you can feed in a baked normal map right here. And essentially what it's doing is you are overlaying this tileable material onto a mesh that has a baked normal. So let's say you have a really large mesh, it's a cliff or something like that. You sculpt it out, you do your low poly, you bake that down, and then you can use that normal map to get those large form details, but then you have a tileable texture on top of that to make it look much higher resolution than it is. The thing that I think that Nanite is going to do is basically take over this process right here. So this is not a thing anymore. Now you could just sculpt out all of your high poly detail, take that entire mesh in to the engine, and instead of overlaying everything on a baked normal map, you just put a tileable texture on that. So super cool process there. The baked normal map process is actually one of the things that we go over in our environment course at Vertex School here. And I'm looking at this workflow now and thinking, do I take that page away and we start looking at how to do UVs on those high poly objects and bring them in and apply tileables that way. So definitely changing the way we do things.
Let's disassemble the scene a little bit. Drop out of the play.
Yes, I'm out of the play.
All right, so grab one of these assets. Just start moving some of this around. Let me see how they compose this.
Right.
Because the ground is the big thing where I'm looking at the ground and I'm like, that looks like landscape.
Yeah, here we go. This right here. This is actually not a landscape on the ground. Like I said, these are just assets. These are geometrical assets.
Oh, man.
I can drag copies of this out. I can rotate these around, edit the world like this. I'm not sure why nobody went in and put a dither material on these so that they blended a little bit better. But doing something like that, you can create some very highly realistic worlds. These guys right here, we got a little bit of a gap. I can just, drag some rocks over like that. Keeping in mind that these are all nanite meshes. Let's take that. And you can, if I move this up, you can see that these are basically all just these Megascans assets, which they actually made that easier too, because anybody familiar with using Megascans in a workflow in Unreal Engine 4, you had to have the Quixel Bridge plugin. You had to set that up. You had to set it up on your specific project, your specific versions. Now that is actually built right into the editor here, so you can just theoretically drag and drop some stuff. Now, I've had some problems with it. It's been a little bit buggy, but I think that's because my library location is not in the default install location. I have a hard drive dedicated to it.
So that happened to me. Yeah.
Yeah. It happened to some other people too, but once they get this all fixed up, you should be able to just drag and drop out of here. But this right here, if I Control B, you'll see that the content drawer now just pops up from down below. These are actually blueprints. So I open this up, and they're using Blueprint to create these prefabs with all these different Megascans assets that they slam together like this, and then just drag those out into the world to create this fancy new world.
What?
Something interesting I noticed with this too was, so if I go to this and I go to the actual mesh in the browser here, which this is another cool feature, it actually will pop up the browser inside of your external editor, not external, but let's try that again. It'll pop it up in this little floating window here, as well as down here. But this particular mesh right here, it says it has 2,000 triangles. And we went through yesterday, Kevin and I both went through a bunch of meshes through here and a bunch of meshes that we converted in our own projects to Nanite, and it all said that they were basically 2,000 triangles. So the idea here is that this thing, which I exported one out, found out it was 4 million triangles, for the actual mesh. But once it's converted to Nanite, it essentially appears to treat it as if it's only made of 2,000 triangles.
Ofer talked about this. He talked about dynamic. I mean, ZBrush has dynamic subdivision levels, but he was talking about that in real time, because ZBrush is a real-time engine. And
yeah. Well, so one of the things with game engines and just game art in general is that for performance reasons, we have these things called LODs, the LODs, the levels of detail, and how that works is you get one of these meshes here. Let me open this guy up, and it's like when you're close to it, it is its full resolution, and then the further away you get from it, it goes down in levels of detail. So as you're looking at it from a distance, it needs less triangles, so it uses less triangles. And there's one of the things that Unreal Engine 4 revolutionized was this system where you can automatically create that. Like this guy, at the moment, has no levels of detail associated with it, but I can come in here and say this is a small prop, and now suddenly it has 4 levels of detail. So I get further away from it, and the amount of triangles will change. But Nanite actually completely replaces that. So with Nanite, this here, as a static mesh, yeah, you can still use the levels of detail if you were using that workflow. But since they're trying to replace LODs with Nanite, any mesh you bring in here, you can technically just right-click it, go to Nanite, enable, and then now it's a Nanite mesh. Doesn't need levels of detail, uses that same Nanite system. The only issue with that, because I was going through here with this scene and trying to work through that, the big thing is, if we look over here, you see these windows.
Mm-hmm.
These guys appear to be broken, and that's because currently Nanite does not work with translucent materials, and I had windows on here. But they did say in the live stream this morning that they are working on that, and by the time it's released, and hopefully in the upcoming hotfix, Nanite will support translucent materials on here. So.
Mm. This is exciting.
But here's the exciting thing too, is that, okay, well, that, this mesh that I converted to Nanite doesn't work with translucent materials. So let me just come back in here and I will disable it, and now it works again. So you can, with the click of a button within, a split second, convert something to Nanite or convert it back into an actual mesh. And it just happens like that. Okay.
All right. Why don't we get to the meat and potatoes then? So we looked at their Valley of the Ancients, the assemblies, and leave us a comment down below, guys, and let us know what you really want to see, what you really want to learn about in Unreal Engine 5, and we'll pop on here and do our best to help you understand it and help ourselves understand it, because now this is Unreal Engine 5 is that's what Vertex was created for me. Because now this is when Unreal becomes much more suited for all media, and really starts to become a tool that a lot more industries use. So feel free to leave a note in the comment of what you want to do, and we'll talk about the thing that we kind of came online to talk about today, which is if you have an Unreal Engine 4 project, how you're going to get that over to an Unreal Engine 5. And I'll just turn this over to John.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. So something magical happened yesterday, and terrifying at the same time. And I don't mean the release of Unreal Engine 5 Early Access. After that came out, I had my inbox was just full of students asking me, should I be converting my project over to 5? What do I need to do for that? And then, more students came in. It's I tried to move my project over to 5, and it's not looking right. I don't know what's going on. And so I did the same thing. So we've got this particular scene right here that you can see, that is part of our environment course in our Game Arts program. So if you're taking that, then you get to see the entire process, concept to completion on this scene here. But I built it in Unreal Engine 4. And so I wanted to take this over to 5, and when I did that, right off the bat, it was terrible. So I converted this project, which is actually really easy to do that, because if I just go into this Epic launcher here, you just you launch up your Unreal Engine 5. It's going to give you a whole list of all of your projects. Let's see, where did that go? Right here. So I just let me grab Vertex text here, and you just open it up, and it's going to ask you to open a copy, and so it'll actually create a copy of your project and convert it for you. That's the first step. But then what happens is you'll go in and you'll open your scene, and you'll probably get something that looks a lot like this, which is totally not what the final result in Unreal Engine 4 looked like. And so this is because of the new Lumen lighting system that Unreal Engine 5 has. And what it does is it's really treating light a whole lot differently. And anybody who follows Polygon Academy, Tim Simpson, he released a new video this morning going through Lumen. Great video. Definitely recommend checking it out. It was very helpful to me, too, trying to figure all of this out. But right off the bat, opening up my scene, this is what I got. Didn't quite look right. But what I discovered was if you're in here and you're looking at, we go into Unreal Engine 5. If you're in here and we go into the post-process volume here, I'll look at my details. There is actually a screen space version under global illumination here that if you turn this on, it will actually use essentially Unreal Engine 4 style lighting. So changing your global illumination to screen space, you're basically working back in Unreal Engine 4 for the most part. And you can use light mapping, all of that good stuff. But over here in Lumen, first order of business is we're not really using light mapping anymore because Lumen is all dynamic. It's a dynamic global illumination, really performant too. I haven't seen any frame drops or anything like that trying to run completely dynamic lighting. But what I had going on here was when I took this scene and all I did was just change it back to screen space, I got that, which is pretty close to identical to what the ArtStation post looks like. So my final renders from Unreal Engine 4. But then what I wanted to do was take this scene and move it over to Lumen, and after playing around with it a little bit, ultimately ended up about here. So similar lighting setup, but looks a little bit better in a lot of places. One of the things I wanted to point out was if you look at this sign here, this is where you can really tell it. And it's just, you see the ambient occlusion and the shadowing and all of that. And then we move over to Lumen and everything is just softer. You get that really nice, soft global illumination. But there were a few things that I had to do to get it to this point. For one thing that I discovered was that Unreal Engine, when it first came out, it had this thing called eye adaptation, which was auto exposure, that made it to where the the brightness would go up and down based on camera movements and all of that. Really annoying feature, but you used to be able to go into project settings and you can find a setting for that in here. Under engine rendering auto exposure, and you would just toggle off this checkbox and it would turn it off for your entire project. There's a bug in Unreal Engine 5 that doesn't actually work in here, so you have to go back to using the old method if you want to turn it off, and that means you have a post-processing volume. You pop into the details, you go to the exposure section, and you've got to set the min brightness and the max brightness to the same number. If you set it to 1, that's going to be essentially the same as turning off auto exposure. So once doing that, that fixed a lot of issues right off the bat. Some other things that I ended up doing was I changed all of my lights from static and stationary to movable, to fully dynamic, because light mapping doesn't really play nicely with Lumen. It's not meant to. I think they just left it in there for legacy projects that are upgrading. But so I changed them all to dynamic, brought my skylight intensity up a little bit. And one big thing that I discovered going through and trying to adjust the lights to work with Lumen was that I needed a lot less lights. So one technique that environment artists would use would be the idea of creating fake bounce lights. So for example, over here in this scene in Unreal Engine 4, I would have a main light coming out of here, and then this guy down here is acting as it's basically faking bounce lighting. And that's something that I would fill out through the scene to get the kind of lighting that I'm looking for. But in 5, with the new real-time global illumination, the first thing I did after, converting all of my lights to dynamic was I went through and I deleted half of them. Because you can come in here and, like, if we look at this guy, now, instead of having that fake bounce light down there, I can just come up here and crank up the indirect lighting contribution. I'm using some crazy numbers right now, which may or may not be intended, but they are getting the job done, and I was still getting 120 FPS, so it seemed to work for me there. But super cool. Got to use less lights and really started thinking more about the indirect lighting, which previously, Unreal Engine 4 with light mass, the indirect lighting setting on a light pertained to the actual light maps that it would bake. So that would determine how many bounces were happening when you are building lights. And now, since it's all real-time global illumination, this actually happens in real time. So I could take, one of these lights and I can drag it out. And even though I'm moving this along, you can see down here that this is actually, allowing these bounces, this indirect lighting, to affect the world in real time. Another big thing I noticed when moving over to Unreal Engine 5 with the lighting was that, as you can tell, this is a very cyberpunk scene, so I got a lot of neon lights. I have a lot of emissive materials. Those emissive materials, now they actually contribute to the overall lighting in a scene a little bit more. So previously, what I had going on was I had this spotlight right here was affecting the majority of the lighting through this area, and the emissive light here was mostly just for show. But now the emissive light itself can contribute quite a bit. So you can see this here. This is actually lighting this scene or this sidewalk down here in real time. If I come down here, because this is a blueprint that I created, if I crank this up to, say, 100, really super bright, but you can see how that lighting actually affects the world. And then, of course, the larger the light is, or the larger the mesh that has that on there is, the more light it contributes to the scene. So you could technically have something like this here, where instead of having a, like a rectangle light or spotlight or anything, you could have, a hanging light that's just an emissive material, and it'll still be able to light an area like this.
That's pretty awesome. Ryan's asking, is UE5 still limited to 3 intersected dynamic lights?
It's probably talking about the stationary light thing, and yes, it is. So we tested that out yesterday, and it's still the same. Your stationary lights, if you drag out a fourth one and they're, overlapping, then you'll get the little red X. I will jump in here and show that. They moved some things around through here, so we don't have the place actor window over here anymore, but it does still exist. So you can add that over there, you can dock it to the side and everything. But if I go into the lights, bring out a point light, and the fourth one, you still get the red X. Different little UI going on there. And that's because you can only have 4 stationary lights overlapping at a time, and the directional light in these scenes is actually stationary as well. I don't know what effect that's actually going to have because I'm not entirely clear on what we're doing with stationary lights with Lumen. Because stationary lights typically are lights that cast dynamic shadows, but they also bake down to the light maps. And since we're not using light maps anymore, as far as I know at the moment, movable is probably what we're going with, but I could be wrong on that. They haven't been entirely clear on that just yet.
Cool.
But yeah, super cool stuff they got going on there. One thing that is also really cool that I discovered this morning, thanks to Tim, is the reflections are a lot better now, in a sense that like if I were to drag this cube out here like this and bring this point light over here, this cube is actually acting a little bit like a softbox. So you can kind of see it there, how when I move the cube around, it affects the lighting ever so subtly there. Maybe if I use like a spotlight on this. So the light is actually coming out of the light, hitting this just like a softbox, bouncing down there and helping illuminate the ground. So if I take it away, you can see how it gets a little darker there, and then I bring it back. So it's not just emissive lights that can help light a scene. Your actual texture colors are contributing to the global illumination as well. So super fun stuff in there. And I do see over here in the comments Keith Roy talking about having a medium spec PC, and Unreal Engine 5 is working just fine over there. Excuse me. I have a Ryzen 5900 and 128 gigabytes of RAM, 3080 RTX, you know, all the works. But you don't need my machine to run Unreal Engine 5. What I heard, you know, from the people over at Epic is that most of the people developing on it at Epic right now are just running off of 1080s. So NVIDIA 1080 machines, 3600 CPUs. So you don't need a beast of a machine to run it. And I've got 2 instances of 5 open. I've got an instance of 4 open. You know, so it's not, even though we have all this new power, it's still pretty lightweight. If you can run 426, you'll have no problem running 5.
All right, so did we summarize what people need to do to kind of import those files?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. The only other thing would be the Nanite conversation, which is, you know, you're thinking about, do you need to go in and convert everything to Nanite for your portfolio projects? Not necessarily, because until you start getting into the gameplay aspects of it, you know, that's not going to really affect it much at all. I didn't notice any difference going from static meshes to Nanite when I converted them for the ramen shop scene. Probably because it was built to be very performant in the first place. So, not something you probably need to worry about there. The biggest thing I think is going to be the lighting situation that's going to be all up in your face when you open it up. You just got to make some quick adjustments for that.
All right, team, if you got any questions, leave them in the comments. But I said it'd be about a half hour. We're about 45 minutes. So let us know what else you guys want covered in Unreal Engine 4. This, I've personally been waiting for this for about a couple of years. This to me is the shift that the game tech needs to really push it into media. To the point where ad agencies and people like that are working on it. And I know from some of the jobs that our students are getting that at the end of the day, it's just the usefulness of this is expanding. And like one of our students getting a job at Applied Intuition, which is a unicorn startup. I think it's a double unicorn startup. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, they're because they're automated vehicle stuff going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So exciting times, and I think for game tech, I mean this is just the beginning. So it's starting now, team. If you need to know more about Vertex School and what we do, what John and I do every single work day. You can learn about us at vertexschool.com. I'll just fill the screen with it. And you can see some of the students. We haven't updated it in a while because we're so busy teaching. But you can see students getting jobs, all that good stuff. And we can help you understand what you need to know. Let me switch this over back to the mix. All right, John, any last words on Unreal Engine 5?
The only last word that I can think of, because I have had a couple students ask about this, is the whole VR side of it. Because I've had a couple of jobs previously where I was working strictly in VR with Unreal Engine, and I haven't tried it out yet. I know people are asking me about it because I used to be the VR guy, but I do intend on testing out Nanite with VR to see how well that works out.
Oh, yeah, that has to happen. What happens to the FPS? Okay. All right, we got a couple of questions, and we'll start looking at those on the upcoming videos. But it's all hands on deck, team, to start sharing Unreal Engine 5 and getting in there and start using this as a platform to educate people, from here. Like, this is our starting place. We just been treading water before this, for me anyways. Ryan, that's a good one. Yeah, we'll take a look at that too. All right, guys. Have an amazing day. See you later. Thanks, John.
All right. See everyone.
All right, ciao.